Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you about this sword right here. It is an SBG Forged Direct Katana, and before I get into the review, a couple quick notes to say up front. One, it is a second-hand sword, therefore it may not be representative of what you would buy if you were to get one new from SBG directly. If you see signs of handling or something like that on the sword or signs of usage, it's fair to assume that those would not be present on a new sword. The other bit to note is that I bought it second-hand with my own money, so do know I spent money on it. If you think that makes me biased, you know at the start. Also, no, I do study Japanese-style swordsmanship. I've done it for a while. I've talked about swords on the internet, well, for the better part or longer than a decade now, but I still don't fancy myself an expert in the subject. So keep all that in mind as you hear my musings and ramblings throughout the course of this video. Alright, so this video is more or less going to be me talking about the build quality, showing you some high-res video, and then doing EI with it and summing up if I think it's worth it or not. I'm not going to cut anything in this video with it. I'm not going to destroy it. I reserve that for review samples and swords that I accidentally break. But the point is, I'm going to go over build quality, fit, finish, and hopefully it helps you determine if a sword like this is worth your hard-earned money or not. By the end of the video, it won't really matter what I say. At least that's the goal. You should have enough information to decide yourself. Now, the basic gist is what makes this special. I should maybe start there. What's the SBG Forged Direct? What's it supposed to do? What makes it unique among the other offerings out there? Well, as I understand it anyway, and the Forged Direct has gone through a few different iterations. At the moment, they name a specific smith that's manufacturing the sword, and they call out premium quality, and that you're basically leveraging the direct relationship that SBG has with a forge, and you're getting some really nice stuff out of that forge. You're getting kind of the top echelon of thing, or the premium quality good stuff at a great value. And that value comes at $900, at least at the filming of this recording right here, the filming of this video. It's $900, though I believe the example I had was purchased on sale sometime 2022, 2023 for around $700 on sale. And so is it worth it? Well, hopefully we'll find that out. But do know in that price point, the expectations are pretty high. $1,000 or coming close to $1,000 or maybe $1,000 or over with some of the options that they offer online, given that you get to pick out some of your fittings and customize it to your liking, but much of that is drawn from the same parts bins that you might see from other manufacturers. Still, you can customize it to some degree and get something a little bespoke to you. $900 is still not a slouchy figure for a sword like that. There are many swords available in that price point, and many swords that offer similar features to this for much less. So hopefully we'll discover why it's special or not. Alright, so I'm going to start with a kasha, the end cap, this pommel bit right here. And as I understand, because I've seen this fitting set before on a Ryujin katana, I believe, this is not necessarily traditionally formed in that there's a little tab that goes down between the scales or the panel or the core of the ska and rests in there. It gives it a little bit more rigidity, but it's also not traditionally formed as I understand it, at least if this is the same version that I saw on that sword. As it is, the casting quality is what I would say mediocre. The ledges are not necessarily crisp and defined. It looks like a mold that's been used a lot. It's got some paint or patina on it, which is held up to practice. The previous owner practiced with this a little bit, and I have as well, and it hasn't rubbed off. There's no sharp ledges, and there's also not any grind lines, so at least the finishing quality doesn't have like somebody didn't take it hard to a grinder and then paint it. So it at least is all reasonably well formed here. Now, it's not particularly well placed though, so as I look at where it rests on the handle, it gets very bunchy and it's not fit particularly well. The knots around it are not overly tight or really very tight. I can move them around, and the ito is overlapping. So when I'm seeing premium quality, I'm kind of expecting the ito to be well done and all the transitions to be good. Ideally it's functional, which this is. It's not sharp, it doesn't hurt me. At the same time, premium quality I would not say it is. The bunchiness around the end is not particularly attractive and not particularly well done. The knots, however, worth noting, do not stand out a lot. So a lot of times these knots get really bunchy around here, and they're not supposed to. They're supposed to rest relatively flat with the remainder of the ito, and that's actually kind of close here. So that much is done right. But I don't particularly like how it's sitting. It doesn't wiggle, it doesn't move, it seems on there relatively tight. But my main problem is really that it looks dumpy and frumpy. I would have liked to see it fit on better. That brings us to the ito itself, the handle. So this is probably my biggest complaint, is that this looks terrible for the money. I can make out the panels. I don't know if they're Hishigami used. I don't believe so. Maybe that's an option on their site. But the panel lines along the side are enormous, and I can make them out very clearly, and it makes this feel like a block. The sides of the handle are almost flat. It doesn't feel particularly good in the hands. It's not that you can't hold it or move it around, or that it's going to fly out of your hands or something, but at the same time it really lacks elegance. And these large panel rims that I see on the side really stand out. If they were recessed into the woodwork, it would have likely been better, but they weren't. And again, something that I would say doesn't resonate with premium quality to me. Now the Saki-haba panels that are used here are not bad. They're not even medium quality panels, but given that it's lacquered black, I still think that they look the part. I can make out nodules. They're not really cheap and small. At the same time, they're not large premium quality items either. There's no emperor node or anything like that I'm spotting, and the nodules are not particularly large. That's not really a problem. I'm just calling it out because I think when you're buying a $900 sword, if you were to buy a $1,000 Hanwei sword, you might see larger nodules in the Saki-haba ray skin. I think honestly that's a waste of money though. When you lacquer it black in particular, a lot of that detail is really obscured. You don't see it very well, and so having a medium quality skin is perfectly fine. At least I see no problem with it, and this seems appropriate for the price point in my mind. It's just I don't like how it's sitting out and how I can make out the ledges. Now the Ito itself is reasonably tight. I can displace it, I can move it. I would say it gets a pass. It gets, the ideal standard here is that, at least what you're going for, what premium quality would be to me, is that I could literally stand on one of these knots and it wouldn't move. That's achieved very rarely in swords, and the only swords in the production realm of things that I see achieve it are $3,000-ish or more. Probably start at the $2,000 price point. Citadel and Evolution blades tend to come with really, really tight Ito. This one is serviceable. It gets a passing score and is good amongst its peers. The diamonds wander a little bit. The Ito can move. It's loose enough where I can kind of displace the Manuki and move them around. But at the same time, it's not giving me the concern that it's going to come unraveled very quickly. And having practiced with it a little bit, the Kashra hasn't come undone, the Ito hasn't loosened, and hasn't really moved around a whole lot over the times that I've practiced with it. At the same time, it's not particularly great looking, and it does move around. There's certainly opportunity to make this tighter and better than it is, but it gets a passing score. In terms of theme, this is chosen by the previous owner. There's gold Manuki here. The casting quality as well seems okay, but nothing particularly special. And the overall theme has little gold accents and embellishments, which honestly I find to be tasteful. Nothing immediately pulls my eye. I think the theme of this, chosen by the previous owner, is good, and I like the overall aesthetic. I like some of the choices. There's some different things offered that at least don't rise to the top of the choices in many other customization options, and I like the choices that are provided in the customization options on the SBG Forge Direct website. If I move up to the Fuchi here, there's a little bit of overlap, and this is where one of the fittings is not particularly well finished. There are sand lines on either end of the Fuchi, and then it's painted. So again, if you're going to have kind of okay fittings, I'd like to at least see that the little stippling and kind of ishime finish that's running around it isn't sanded off and doesn't have kind of grind marks and tool marks on it, which I see on either end of the Fuchi. I'm being very particular about this one, but again, when you're when there's a sword community member, somebody that's kind of built a community in some of these mass production swords, kind of selling some of the stuff out there and charging a premium for it at $900 and calling it premium quality, I want to be kind of nitpicky about it, because this is the exact kind of stuff that the community gets nitpicky about, and it's unfortunate that I'm kind of seeing some of the same problems here that I would see on a much less expensive sword. I don't know if this is called out in the purchase or anything like that, if it's shown in the examples that you might buy, but I guess I would find the tool marks and whatnot disappointing. The tsuba, I like this option here. It's got a little lizard or something crawling around woodwork. I don't see this tsuba offered very often, and I like it. The gold detailing is tastefully done. It doesn't look like it's finger painted on. The wooden texture that runs kind of over the tsuba on both sides is reasonably well done and kind of runs around the rim of it, making it seem a little bit nicer than it is. It's obviously a cast piece, but it's a little bit more three-dimensional than is typically called out, and I think tastefully done with some of the gold accents. Oftentimes these gold accents and detailings can be really haphazardly applied and look almost crude or childish, and I don't see that here. It actually looks like a pretty nice tsuba, and it's fit on reasonably well. Now, the saya probably originally came with a Sugeo. It didn't come to me with one. This one is got a bamboo theme in it, and I don't know if it's carved in or if it's just stenciled on. I'm not entirely sure, but there is a texture to it. It feels like there's grooves that are in there, and it could be an artifact of the paint and coating that's on here. or it could be carved in, and I'm not quite sure. But there's subtle details on either end of the saya, the scabbard. They roll around the back, and it's tastefully done. It doesn't stand out as like a really blingy in your face kind of thing, but it offers just a little bit of subtle detail on the sword that I kind of appreciate. I like the overall detailing here. I like how it runs around. I like how subtle it is, and I like that it doesn't seem hokey or particularly cheap. It's a reasonably well-made option. The woodwork doesn't ripple around or anything either, but it is worth calling out that the scabbard is kind of one thickness. It doesn't have any taper to it. The fittings, at least the koiguchi area, is horn. I can't tell so much with the kojiri. I believe this is horn as well, and I don't see, or rather the kurigata right here, I think that's horn. I don't see horn on the kojiri at the end. It may well be it's painted, and I'm guessing because these two appear to be horn that it likely is, but I'm not 100% on it. Now, like I said, previous owner used it, and so it has been drawn and sheathed a lot, but still has reasonable tension. Doesn't rattle, at least not a lot, not where it matters, and the saya overall, from a fitment perspective, at least if you're doing EI and drawing and sheathing it a lot, is not so bad. The habaki on the item is, I think, a missed opportunity here because it doesn't have really much detail. It's a plain brass habaki. This, if you have one sword, is probably not going to bother you, but if you have a lot in your collection or you buy a lot of them, it begins to be something that you see as a common part across a number of swords and an opportunity to do something a little different. So I would have loved to see something a little different here, but I don't. It's a simple brass habaki. That said, it does its job, and if you don't have a lot of swords, haven't jumped off the deep end in them, then it's probably not going to irritate you. Now I'm going to talk about the blade, the part that you're most interested in, but I'm going to kind of start with the part that you're not interested in. That's what's under the hood here. And the Nakago is mediocre looking, and when it's forged by a master smith and somebody is called out and named, I'd like their name to be on it, and I'd like it to be nice looking. Under the hood for $900, I'm hoping, since what I'm not seeing here is $900 worth of quality in the fittings and scabbard and stuff. It's not garbage, but similar things can be had certainly less than $900. I'd love to see that the blade really stands apart, and elements of the blade certainly are beautiful where it matters a little bit more, where most people are going to see it. But the Nakago is kind of a testament to how much attention is put into the blade and the parts that people don't see. And this is mediocre. I don't see a lot of detail. I don't see a lot of attention here. And I do see that level of attention in some other blades from places like Huawei and things like that. There are blades in this price point that offer a pretty Nakago. This just doesn't happen to be one of them. And I was kind of hoping it would be, because it's one of those sword nerdy things that doofuses like me care about. Anyway, the business end of the blade, the pointy stabby part, and the sharp bit is really well done. And I can see where quality was poured in here, because the polish is pretty. It brings out a lot of detail in a lovely hamon. The lines are reasonably crisp and well formed. The bevels are clean and straight. The mune doesn't wiggle around a lot, and it's not full of ripples. And it even has not quite a reinforced kisaki, but there's a little bit of swell here, a little bit of dimension. You have to look for it, but some of it is there. And so there is some nuance and beauty to the blade that you don't see in common swords, even at this price point. But this is really where really it shines above some of the others. Only just, but still, it does shine and has some character. So this has a choji hamon. It runs, and it's got an erratic pattern that's well done and is brought out by some of the polishing that's done. The lines are crisp and clean. It's very, very sharp and reasonably well done. This one does not have a bohi or any other really interesting, I guess, characteristics of the blade. It's a pretty simple shinogi zukuri blade, but the hamon is erratic. It's very easy to see in just about any light. The kisaki is reasonably well polished. It's geometric. I can make out some saya rub and stuff here, but it's well shaped and reasonably well done, especially when we talk about swords under $1,000. There are swords that do it better at the same price. Zisei does polish better. I would argue Huawei does polish better and some hamon better. But at the same time, this is at least a step above. Even, if I compare it to some of the Hanwei polishes that I have, the characteristics of the hamon are not brought out as well. The lines are not necessarily as clean. The polish is not as flat. And there's a number of blades at $900 from Hanwei that are not as nice as this. So it's not industry leading. At the same time, it's certainly above the average. All right, so now I can talk about moving the sword around and what it was like to do EI with it. And fortunately, I can say that it's comfortable. The handle feels weird in the hand. but the Ito's tight enough where it doesn't feel like I have to white knuckle it and it's going to come loose out of my hand. It moves around. It's has a little bit of rasp in some of the spots on the scabbard where it draws and maybe catches or touches something, so it's tough to be very, very quiet with it. But I would say overall it works pretty well, and it works as well as most things in this price category. The Zisei was a little bit better. Some examples from Dragon Sword have been a little bit better, but Sayas are tricky, and especially with some of the temperature change and the fact that they're made of wood, it can be doubly tricky. The point is, though, that if you're using it as a practitioner, it was comfortable. It wasn't anything that wowed me, but at the same time, it wasn't uncomfortable, unpleasant, or bad in any way. It held the sword in the right way, it drew in the right way, and it has some extra horn reinforcement that makes me feel if I slip up or something, it's not going to dice my fingers, at least particularly easily. So I would say from a practitioner standpoint, moving it around, it was comfortable, but I could certainly notice the handle being a bit on the blocky side, and that much was not comfortable. But apart from that, it was overall a reasonably pleasant experience to use, and I don't really have much of anything negative to say about it, other than it could be a little bit more fine and a little bit less raspy, and the handle, the Ito, could be a little tighter and better formed. All things that I mentioned earlier. You kind of notice some of those subtle nuances as you're practicing and moving it around, but I wouldn't say anything that really catches my eye or gives me concern and makes me feel out of control. So all right, sword friends, that is the useful information that I can give you. I've talked about it, I've talked about each part, I've showed you a high-res video, I've moved it around and talked about the experience of doing that. I'm sure it'd be useful to see me cut with it or push it to failure, but I'm not going to do that in this video. The point is, though, hopefully it's been useful enough to help you decide if it's worth your money or not, and it's time for me to answer that question myself. And to me, no, I don't think so. Particularly if I look at other sword manufacturers that charge $900. It seems like Huawei would be a better example. If you want something that's refined and fit and finished, a lot of these things that I would expect in terms of premium quality, little attention to detail and nuances that make me feel like somebody paid attention while they're making it, are better in Huawei. They're better in Skydro. They're better in Zisei, and I would say if that's the kind of nuanced detail that I'm looking for, I would prefer to get an offering from one of those guys, even though I would lose, or at least very likely lose, some of the customization options that I have on this sword. $900 is a substantial amount of money for what I think this is. And while I don't doubt that there's some cost involved in doing it, and that it has some charm maybe that I'm missing, to me it just seems like there are other swords available at this price that have more to offer. At $700 on sale, I don't know that my opinion honestly changes that much. Again, there are offerings from at least Huawei that I would still lean towards. Zisei is out of the picture. They start at roughly $900. There are probably some offerings from Skydro that I would similarly like and may come with folded steel or do something unique, special, or different than what this sword does. What I'm really disappointed about, honestly, is the fitment on the ska. When it says premium quality, I would like to see the fitment on the Ito Maki be better, and this looks relatively crude for anything that's in the $900 range. I would complain about it if it were on a $300 sword. On a $900 sword that is sold from somebody that's supposed to know that the community bitches about this stuff and be selling something to the community that they're going to like and trust, this seems like even more of a disappointment. The Nakago, to a lesser extent, a lot of people in the community that want a good sword never take it apart, and so I can see not spending a lot of money on something most people are never going to see. But I would still like it if it were there. I'd like the premium quality to be across the entire sword and not just in the shiny, sharp part of the blade. Anyway, those are my thoughts. That's why I think what I think. You're welcome to disagree. Point out what I'm missing about this sword that makes it special, because I'm failing to see it. Anyway, that's all I've got. Hopefully it was helpful. Cheers, and thanks for watching.